Hello and welcome to North 100, a Canadian Highlander podcast. My name is Serge. Today I'm joined by a Nelly.
Hey, I'm here.
And a Wheeler.
Hi.
And today, switching things up, we got a Paul on tech.
Hello.
A reminder that everything we do is brought to you by you, with your support of the Patreon over at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. Buckle up and welcome to quite possibly the largest set review in North 100 history. This is the most cards I think we have ever had to talk about. And this is going to be the first ever 4-part set review. This set seems to be pretty pushed. So for part 1, we're going to only be talking about white and blue cards. And even just those, we got a lot. So buckle up. But first, a quick reminder that this is not an exhaustive set review. We're only going to talk about the cards that we think are going to be relevant to the format or that we think you're going to have a lot of questions about and we want to get ahead of those comments. We are covering the entire base set and any relevant Commander cards that might make an impact. There are none for white and blue, but just to let you know, those are a consideration when we're evaluating stuff. Without further ado, Wheeler, you want to start us off?
Yeah, why not? A Johnny Noctil Pariah. 1 and a white for a 1/2 legendary cat warrior. When a Johnny enters the battlefield, you create a 2/1 white cat warrior creature token. Whenever one or more other cats you control die, you may exile a Johnny. Then return him to the battlefield transformed under his owner's control. And he transforms into a Johnny Noctil Avenger, which has 3 starting loyalty, a loyalty ability of +2, put a 1/1 counter on each cat you control. 0, create a 2/1 white cat warrior creature token. When you do, if you control a red permanent other than a Johnny, he deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to any target. And -4, each opponent chooses an artifact, creature, an enchantment, and a planeswalker from among the non-land permanents they control, then sacrifices the rest.
Ooh.
That's a lot of words.
So many words, man.
Not to make you work extra hard, Paul, but I'd like to go back to the first part of this card and talk about the front side. So on the front side, we have a 2-mana creature that is a legend that brings along another creature. So 2 bodies on 1 card. You get 3/3 worth of stats across these 2 bodies. The one that is the least aggressive part of this puzzle, the 1/2, happens to be the card itself, which means that you can attack with this 2/1, and if it dies, you get a Planeswalker. And if you just want more 2/1s, you can Caracas your own a Johnny, or Blink your own a Johnny, or you can, bring it back off of like a Vesper Lark, or bring it out of your deck off of an Imperial Recruiter or Recruiter of the Guard. It's just a cheap legend that they don't want to Caracas, that you might want to Caracas, that floods the board and threatens to turn into a Planeswalker that can start to ping off other permanents. If we can now go to the other side, Paul. We can, like, that. This 0 ability on a Johnny, you just make another cat. So you lose your cat token, then you're like, I wanted that again. And if you're mono white, then that's just 0, make a 2/1.
Yeah.
That's still really good on a Planeswalker that was a 2-drop.
Yeah.
That was a creature that already made a token. But if you happen to be Boros or Naya or something with other red permanents, then you get to start machine gunning their board going to the dome. If you have incidental other cats running around like Lion Sash or Leanin Arbiter or Kasali Pride Mage, this +2 is relevant. It's also just fine in making these other cats that you've made bigger, and then threatening to cast Tragic Arrogance for 0 mana. It's not a Cataclysm, it's a Tragic Arrogance. Yeah, this card's pretty cracked.
All right.
This card's cracked. I think it's very good.
Interesting. I was having a hard time evaluating these and coming right out the gate and you being like, no, this is actually good.
Yeah, the worst one is Ral, and he's still just like a card people will slam with the other Goblin Electromancers.
Right, well,
like there, we'll save that for when we get there.
Spoilers,
but yeah, these this might shock you,
All right.
but 2-mana planeswalkers are pretty good.
Home. Where do you see people playing this?
Do you have planes in your deck and want cheap
That good.
creatures?
That good, eh?
I think so. If you
Wow.
want cheap creatures and have basic planes in your deck, you should probably consider this card.
I think even if you don't have a basic planes, but you can add white mana and you have a sacrifice outlet, it's probably worth. This thing comes down. If you just want to machine gun your own creatures away to your goblin bombardment, you can immediately do 2 of them, and you still have a planeswalker that's threatening to keep making them the next turn. And you might even get the trigger, right? Because your goblin bombardment is a red permanent. He's realizing as he's saying it.
Interesting. Cool.
Yeah, great card.
Shall we move on to the next one? Nelly.
I actually want to slip in some more ado, and it's just that when you said earlier that this isn't exhaustive, I'm actually actively looking forward to whichever card we miss, because this is our one super high power set of the year, and so there's probably something cool that we didn't include because we tried to kind of keep it somewhat tight.
You think this is the only high power set that we're going
Well, it's supposed to be the biggest one. Anyways, Envoy of the Ancestors, 2 and a white for a 2/3 human cleric with Outlast 1 white. A reminder, Outlast is tap this, put a +1/+1 counter on this, pay the Outlast cost, and only do this as a sorcery. And it just says modified creatures you control have lifelink. So pretty similar to the Abzan Lord that did this. There was one that did lifelink, but this one says not just creatures with +1/+1 counters have it. This is any modified creature. So if you have an equipment, an aura, and yeah, I actually don't know where this one goes. I'm happy to talk about it in this situation, but I need a little help for thinking which deck plays this.
Counters.
Right. Hardened Scales, I've been meaning to come after you. This is I'm not this year, I've got other projects, but before the end of 2025, I need to jam some games with Hardened Scales because this is a pretty good enabler. The Outlast is only 1 white mana. You're going to play it and already have 3 creatures that have +1/+1 counters on them, and now they have lifelink.
Yeah, the original version of this card cost 4 mana and had 2 toughness.
Right, yes. It was an uncommon from Abzan, but the stats were way worse, and it cost 1 more mana. I think the Outlast was still only 1 on that.
It was still only 1.
But this one, if your Shadow Spear's on something, now it has double lifelink. Watch out.
Like, green-white counters has
double lifelink?
Well, I don't know if that's how that works.
It's not. But
double lifelink.
I just thought of the first equipment that people play.
I know.
The counters decks has so many versions of Luminarch Aspirant now. Just the combat put a counter on something that swinging with several lifelink creatures is just going to be a massive.
What a huge life swing.
Especially because that deck is just filled with creatures that get massive.
Yeah.
All right, next up.
Combat.
We've got the Flare of Fortitude. This is a 4-mana instant for 2 white with an alternative cost. You may sacrifice a non-token white creature rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Until end of turn, your life total can't change, and permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible. Now, just to broaden the conversation, this is an entire cycle. Every color gets one of these. This is the white one, and this is interesting. I'm trying to think of... Sorry, what?
Speak on that.
Yeah. My brain is trying to rank them or whatever. And I don't know. I am low on this one for what it's worth. I don't know a deck that immediately wants to put this in. I think this is one of the cards that we're going to talk about for completion of the set. And a lot of people want to know how we evaluate them and where they fit in the cycle. But... it's expensive on both sides, and I don't know how exciting this is. A comparison would be something like Boros Charm that has a similar effect and offers a tremendous degree more flexibility with double strike and direct burn damage, and even that card doesn't really see play. This is a cool effect. It's neat that it's free, but I can't think of any deck that wants to sacrifice a card slot for the ability to effectively fog your opponent or anti-wrath yourself or prevent a win. Maybe if you have the read on a metagame, but even then, I think this is just too narrow.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, the play pattern that it's the most excited about is you wrathing proactively, right? And that's just not something we see in our format. But I don't know. Yeah. This is certainly one of the coolest versions of that effect.
Yeah. Shall we move on?
Yes, let's.
Wheeler.
Glyph Elemental. 1 and a white for a 2/2 enchantment creature, Elemental, with Bestow for 1 and a white. and it has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you put a 1/1 counter on Glyph Elemental, and enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each 1/1 counter on Glyph Elemental. So if you just play this as a 2-mana 2/2 that has landfall, I get bigger. Or you can suit up another creature to give that creature, hey, I'm going to get bigger. But the creature doesn't gain landfall. This still has landfall. So it gets bigger from all the counters getting put on the Glyph Elemental, but if that creature dies, then the bestowed creature falls off and will just be this massive Glyph Elemental. My thoughts on this card is that and this is kind of a summary of what this set is as well, is that the places where this is going to show up are limited and niche, but wow, is it an improvement over the crap you had to play in order to justify some of these themes. Like, Serge is losing his mind because of Sanctum Stompy, or like the aggro. Actually, somebody suggested another name for this, which is just Bestow Beatdown, which is
cute. I like that.
More... What does Sanctum Stompy mean if I'm a small Victorian child? Nothing. Bestow Beatdown? Oh, what up? Word? We're playing Theros? You know, it's just that easy.
A small Victorian child? That's who we're appealing to these days?
Well, I mean, before I became a large Victorian man, I was a small Victorian child.
This is the man who names decks like Cephalid Breakfast and Garbage Platter. You're trying to talk about accessibility with deck names?
Hey, that's stolen valor. I didn't name Cephalid Breakfast. But I will take a Yawgmoth's Jacuzzi or two.
Right? Yeah. I am so hyped. So, just to talk about it broadly, Sanctum Stompy got a ton of cards in the set, so many. And there are some cards that would just be good for that deck that we're not talking about, because outside of it, it's not great. But this is huge. You're probably going to say no to this, but I do want to talk about the creature type elemental, because that is, you're rolling your eyes at me. That is no, not typal. What's the word? Kindred deck that I've been hoping to make work because of Omnath and stuff for a while. More elementals also makes me happy, but that's not why we're excited about this card.
Elementals do like lands, right?
He's got a point.
You suit up your Risen Reef and go to town.
As the premier elemental scapeshift pilot of the format.
Not this one?
I don't think this is what I want to be doing with that deck.
That's fair. All right, shall we move on to Nelly?
Well, I do have one more garbage place that I want to play this card.
Please, yeah.
I've been brewing for the past 3 years a landfall aggro deck.
Sick.
Oh, with step links and everything?
Step links, Akum Hellhound. And it's got actual scape shift. That deck is over the past 2 years has received a ton of support very quietly.
Sure.
But Bristly Bill and this guy in the past couple of months, just your 2-drop density is through the roof. And now Boros is a good color combination, so you're not necessarily anchored to the green. You can actually have a more even spread, and it's pretty hot.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So you're telling me you have a version that doesn't even run Scapeshift and you're still stoked about it?
I have a version every version has Scapeshift.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You're
that's like your berserk.
Sure.
You're just
yeah.
boop boop.
Well, okay, I was just trying to understand what you were saying when you're you're not married to the green.
Right, okay.
I get it.
All right, Nelly, you're up.
It's time to talk about Guide of Souls. One white mana for a 1/2 second toughness human cleric. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life and get 1 energy counter. Whenever you attack, you may pay 3 energy counters. When you do, put 2 +1/+1 counters and a flying counter on target attacking creature. It becomes an angel in addition to its other types. So, as a reminder, energy exists in the command zone. There are counters that are on you, sort of like poison. I actually can't remember if they can be proliferated.
They can.
You can proliferate your energy. Very good. And various cards make them, but there's no rule about getting energy any other way. You just get it when the cards tell you to get it. So this card on its own, play pattern of just you play this, you play 3 more creatures after this that with a similar mana cost. Or maybe, I don't know, you play that Ajani we were looking at earlier or some other thing that makes tokens. This card doesn't say non-token at it. You can just play Raise the Alarm. And then after you've gotten 3, one of your little tokens gets to be a +2/+2 flying.
I hate this.
It's
I
got
love
it's got to
this.
be the best. It's got to be the best Soul Warden of all time.
It is, and that's the frustrating part.
Yeah.
Is Soul Wardens, specifically in Ruin Your Evening, are already debilitating the deck that's good for, and this one might be good enough that it actually sees play outside of that format.
Yeah.
Because it just gains you a little bit of incidental life, and then lets you just press down the gas pedal. Does it get a flying? It gets a flying counter.
Becomes a flying angel.
It permanently becomes flying.
If
oh
this
my
is
god!
the new normal, like I think just black-white life gain stuff is probably like a really good deck.
Yeah.
Like this card's bananas strong.
It doesn't. It's also whenever you attack, so this never actually has to get into the red zone.
Yeah.
which is
That's
pretty
a good
important.
point. That's a good
gets to
point.
sit back, gain you life, get you energy.
And it takes up 2 of their fury damage.
Yeah. So when Kaladesh first dropped, Kaladesh block, I thought energy was really cool, and it was just way too niche to make any sort of impact outside of sort of limited or like block constructed or something like that. And I am excited to see it back, and it'll be curious to see what cards make a splash in our format, and if anything comes back. Wheeler's giving me the face.
Rogue Refiner got banned in Standard. Like it did make a big splash in Standard.
No, it was huge, but I mean specifically in Singleton, like for us. Sorry. I guess the way I phrased that, I understand what I meant. Block constructed, I meant like standard in that time, but not in our format.
Sure.
So energy cards. Playing an energy card makes you want to play more energy cards.
Yeah, and not
in
all of them are
fact,
good.
Just makes you like basically you need to play mono energy cards and then maybe a glory bringer as a treat. But like you need to have these energy cards all kind of jiving together. And they don't do that in Singleton.
No, they
and
definitely
so
don't.
The energy cards that you are going to see to, like temper expectations are cards like this, where if it didn't have the energy ability, I'd probably just still play a 1-mana 1/2 one-sided Soul Warden that happens to be a human.
We would still be talking about it. I would want to point out, like, hey, they printed another Soul Warden.
Yeah.
Wasn't there like one card in red in our format that made it? Like it made energy and it had its own energy payoff. Like
Gruul
Monsters played one for
Furnace Lightning or-
Voltaic Brawler.
Voltaic
something
Brawler.
like that,
That's,
right?
that's another good example.
Yeah.
That one's a 2-mana 3/2, and then when it attacks, you can pay some. It makes 2 energy on ETB. When it attacks, you can pay some energy to buff it +1/+1 and give it trample.
Yeah.
But like that's a 2-mana 3/2 for 2, which at the time was great.
Yeah.
and is still just serviceable. That you just need to get 2 big attacks
It's
in.
self-enclosed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's another one coming up that'll be pretty important about this conversation, but yeah, they're mostly just contained energy vessels. I am so mad that Nelson gets both the Ruin Your Evening card.
I mean, you can
Well,
always
actually,
weigh in.
there's like 5 more.
Yeah. Oh no. This set's gonna ruin a lot of people's.
Oh yeah.
Are we ready to move on?
Yes, let's.
All right, next up we have the Indebted Spirit. 1-mana 1/1 enchantment creature spirit for a single white pip. Bestows for 2 and a white. Has Afterlife 1 and enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has Afterlife 1. This card is phenomenal. I like it entirely in sort of the Sanctum Stompy or Victorian Child. What was your one again?
I hadn't seen this card
Bestow
yet.
Beatdown.
Somehow I
Bestow
missed it.
Beatdown.
And I want to throw up in my mouth a little bit.
I am curious because of the Afterlife 1. Is this an Aristocrats card? It's like 4 bodies stapled to 1.
Yes.
Yeah.
Seems like
Yeah,
it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not shocked that you went to the bestow right away.
Yes.
But like you bestow this onto a creature, sack the creature it bestowed, get a token.
Yeah.
So you've sacrificed 1 creature.
Yeah.
You then sacrifice the afterlife creature. Because you've sacrificed the bestowed creature, this falls off. So then you sacrifice this, which then makes another token,
Yeah.
and you sacrifice that.
Yeah, this gives you 4 bodies.
It's just like, it's so messed up.
I mean, yeah, it's just fantastic, like Doom Traveler / 3 mana for 3 idiots.
Yeah.
It's like modal spell.
Doom Traveler or Frank.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sprouting
exactly.
Thrynax.
Yeah, exactly. You can have Frank or you can have Doom Traveler. You pick. Yeah,
and
that's
they fly, so
Yes,
it can also
yeah.
just be like spectral
yeah,
perception.
yeah, exactly. Just don't sacrifice the
Yeah.
spirit attack with it instead. No, there's a lot going on here for a very, very reasonable price.
I mean, the thing I'm most excited about for this with the Sanctum Stompy is it's a 1-drop.
Yeah,
that deck
sure.
is missing so many 1-drops to really start accelerating into.
There are a lot,
and it
now.
gives you the flexibility to play it later. It slices, it dices. It's so funny that this unassuming card can make such a huge impact in 2 niche decks, but hey.
I mean, this card looks jacked. Like,
The story of this set is it's that and reminding people these are 1 mana cards.
Yeah.
It is so like that's a single mana.
Yep. All right, let's move on to Wheeler.
Speaking of a single mana, Mandibular Kite. 1 white for a living weapon equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1, has flying, and is equipped for 3 and a white. So the floor of this is that it's a 1 mana, 1/1 flyer. The creature happens to be a token, but this is a 1 mana artifact. It's an equipment. If you decide to use your extra mana to put it on something else, it gives that +1/+1 in flying. And it's kind of a little dork. Like, it's just a role player, but I really like 1 mana equipment. Like, we're getting to a density where I think we can start to like Pure Steel Paladin our way and SRAM.
But I've been
like
doing that for
Storm.
like 10 years.
Well, you've been doing it for like Bone Splitters, and I don't want to treat Bone
You're
Splitter.
thinking of like reconfigure and living weapon sort of stuff, eh?
Well, I just want to draw cards.
Sure.
And also just like it's worth having a density of equipment that also just come with bodies.
Yes.
this seems like an important piece of the conversation of like what like creature you want to include for your Urza Saga. Currently, I think Haywire Might is like the main one I'm seeing. But if you don't have green mana, maybe this is
Not
a conversation.
Not to continue the trend of everybody.
That doesn't work.
On
It
every,
has to be one colorless.
Let me
or
get my
zero.
roast out. Not to continue the trend of everybody on this podcast not getting Urza Saga. Except
I've
for
never
me.
been wrong about anything in my life.
What does Urza Saga do?
I have no idea.
All right.
Yeah,
That's why I can't be wrong. I never,
Resolve.
I never claim I'm right.
I've resolved those triggers so many times, and every single time I'm reading them. There's too many words on Urza Saga. I haven't
Yeah.
finished the book yet. Yeah, no, my bad. Sorry. Paul, can we edit all that out yet?
Cards
right.
fine role player.
Anything else? Yeah. All right. Let's move on to Nelly.
Hey, I'm going to talk about Ocelot Pride, and I'm not going to read it either. It's it's 1 white mana for a 1/1 cat with first strike and lifelink and ascend, which means you just ascend if you have 10 or more permanents ever.
Done.
It also says, so that's a lot right there. This is, I mean, it has a mythic orange symbol, so it keeps going, but like a 1/1 first strike lifelink for one. I don't know. I'm not turning my nose down yet. At the beginning of your end step, if you gained life this turn, create a 1/1 white cat creature token. Then, if you have the City's Blessing, for each token you control that entered the battlefield this turn, create a token that's a copy of it. That's so much. Like, 1 mana? Why is this only 1 mana? Just comes down, and if you're in the middle of the game already or the later part of the game, you're making 3 cats immediately.
Yeah.
You just get to make all the tokens for 1 white mana right away.
Yeah.
This is wild.
My brain is kind of messed up. My first
I don't even know what Urza Saga does.
my first thought for a home for this is actually Food Fight.
Okay,
I don't know if that's right or not.
gains life a bit.
Well, you gain life in that deck a lot, but you also make so many tokens. And so you're like, hey, I made 3 food tokens and a clue token and like 2 treasure tokens this turn.
Yeah.
And Kitty is like, here, have some more.
It doesn't say it doesn't say creature token,
Yeah.
right?
And you know, that, I don't know, maybe that's weird. Maybe I'm just supposed to play this next to Urza Saga, which nobody knows what it does, and that new 4 mana white one that poops out the better constructs that cares about creatures too. Like maybe that's the play pattern that people are most hype
The
about. but-
Smithy,
yeah.
Smiths and Ocelots together at last. There's a lot of really busted stuff you're going to do with this.
Yeah.
Your opponent is going to kill it in your second main phase.
All right.
But it's only
Wheeler.
1 white mana.
What's happening?
Where's your
bud?
home for it?
Okay.
Yeah.
I noticed that you two were talking about the cards that you want to surround this with,
Uh-huh.
and seemingly ignoring the fact that you don't have to do that.
Nope, that's true.
This card just does that all by itself.
It even gets you to ascend by itself.
Oh,
Yeah.
but that's boring. Let's talk about
Well,
No,
I
it's
mean,
fine, yeah.
I would like to talk
You
about
can play
the,
Protect the Queen with Ocelot Pride if you want.
like the power
Sure.
level of this card is through the roof.
Yes.
Again, it's just a 1-drop.
Yeah.
So it's real easy to justify including and playing. First Strike is also a keyword they don't print a lot because it just dominates the board.
Yeah, it clogs it up, causes board stalls.
And you know what also clogs the board?
Lifelink.
Making tokens.
Mm-hmm.
Lifelink racing people. Getting to Ascend incredibly easy because all you need, doesn't matter how you gain the life, you just gain the life. And it doesn't matter if the token's a creature or not. If you made a food token, if you made a treasure token, a clue, if you gain life, you get to make another copy of that. This card is cracked. It is just like, again, are you a deck with cheap white creatures? Great. You should probably give this one a shot. Aristocrats, Ruin Your Evening, Death and Taxes. The food deck is fine. Like, honestly, if you're playing deck with, like, equipment or whatever, like modifications on this, like, this card gets out of hand very quickly. What the hell? Like,
Yeah.
it blocks Ragavan 2 different ways.
Yeah.
Take
Yeah.
that, idiot monkey.
I am going to
You're
ruin...
like, haha, monkey, and you're like, haha, kitty.
Haha. If you make a Karnstruct off your Urza Saga, you can make a copy of that, you know?
That's so spicy.
Yeah, this card is unbelievable.
Shall we?
Let's.
All right, next up, Pearl Ear, Pearl Ear, Imperial Advisor. This is a 3-mana 3/4 legendary Fox Advisor for 1 white. It has lifelink, and enchantment spells you cast have affinity for auras. So they cast, oh my god, I can't even English right now. They cost 1 less to cast for each aura you control. Whenever you cast an aura spell that targets a modified permanent you control, draw a card. So if the target you are putting it on already has an aura, a counter, or an equipment on it, then you draw a card.
Once per turn, right?
Once
Once per turn, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you have to target a modified permanent, so that's sort of like a tax. It's not as bad as saying once per turn, but it's sort of like the first one doesn't draw your card. Maybe it's at least a little bit of control.
I'm sorry, eggs in one basket player, but you won't believe where you're going to have to put all your eggs.
Yeah.
The Sanctum Stompy deck keeps getting better and better. This is a phenomenal top end. Normally, for this kind of effect, you don't also get a keyword with it. Like your Pure Steel Paladin is just a 2-mana 2/2. Or the other effect, what's the other Fox from like the Kamigawa one?
Oh, Light Pause?
Yeah, is, a 2-mana 2/2 with lifelink. This is a 3-mana 3/4 with lifelink. It has a above the curve body and a huge keyword for, a deck that tries to thicken all of its creatures with stuff that it's doing. This is very exciting and probably one of the best top end cards you can have for a deck that can generate ridiculous amounts of mana.
Oh, I hate that we're in a world where top end is now described.
mana.
It's a 3-mana card.
Yeah.
We play Moxen.
Well,
I mean, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
This isn't a criticism of you because I agree with what you're saying. This is just like oh yeah. Hey, remember when we cast 5 drops?
the amazing thing about
Thrag
this
Tusk remembers.
is too, like, your bestows are going to be so cheap with this, right? Like,
Yeah.
people who picture elf ball decks, you play your Glimpse of Nature, and then one drop, you just draw cards. You're doing that with bestow potentially for this.
Yeah.
You could have some beautiful pop-off turns, like not just as a value engine, but almost as a finisher. If things come together properly, I could see you casting, 3 or 4 bestow creatures onto a threat and hitting for a bajillion.
Yep. Real gross.
Yeah. Let's move on to Wheeler.
Felia Exuberant Shepherd. 1 and a white
Dog.
for a 2/2 dog with flash. It is a legendary creature. Whenever Felia Exuberant Shepherd attacks, you exile up to 1 other target non-land permanent. At the beginning of the next end step, you return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. If it entered under your control, you put a 1/1 counter on Felia. Okay, there's a shockingly large amount of stuff to unpack. with
Yeah.
this
lot
card.
for this
Those
card.
are a
This-
lot of words.
Yeah.
Yeah. So being a flash threat is pretty nice, especially against Caracas, is that it can make timing with how they Caracas and when you cast this and everything a little awkward for them. It's very cheap, reasonable body, 2/2. Get all that out of the way. Being able to exile any non-land permanent is wild.
Unbelievably
That is
powerful.
shockingly powerful.
Yeah.
you can target your opponent's cards to get them out of the way. If they're just a big idiot that's going to be blocking, get out of here. You don't need to block this. This lets me attack nicely. Lets me exile your tokens, your construct tokens, and they're gone permanently. Lets me reset anything with like counters or like, nice Murktide Regent. Be ashamed if it went on vacation and came back a 3/3 or whatever. And then blinking your own cards, blink your Solitude, reset, blink your Stoneforge, reset your Cauldron Complete or your like Batterskull, reset a Planeswalker after you've
Planeswalker thing can go either way, right?
Mm-hmm. Like there is just so much that you can do, and then because this card's printed in 2024, it just throws a counter on Felia for some reason, so that this can keep attacking. The downside is that attacking with a 2/2 can be a little hard to do right out the gates. But we're playing white. We're playing white and like potentially white X. So like, I don't know if you play this in like a blink deck, being able to like Reflector Mage, bounce your thing, then get in my attack and blink the Reflector Mage. And then maybe it comes back and bounce your tap creature as well. Or like you play a Solitude and then you get to blink it. Like there are ways of getting this through. Obviously decks that play cheap white creatures can play Mother of Runes, Giver of Runes, that kind of card. Like this is... Jesus Christ.
So people who maybe haven't been playing Magic as long might not remember the tyranny that was Flicker Wisp in old school Legacy Death and Taxes, which was a 3-mana 3/1 flyer.
It still shows up.
Actually, Flicker Wisp hasn't really been replaced yet.
Yeah.
Not entirely. Right?
But, I mean, just showing like another unassuming card. And this was a staple at one of the highest levels of competitive Magic that you could be playing with the most powerful cards out there. And it doesn't seem that powerful until you see it in practice. It's very, very, very strong. Going back to the dog, one potential hoop is that it's not a May. Yeah. You have to do it each time. So if you are ahead on board, well, maybe it gets a little bit weird.
Up to 1.
Oh, it is a May.
It is a May.
Yeah.
They don't say May anymore. They say up to.
Up to.
So you're like trying to... There's so many words in this card.
That entire point I said is completely invalidated. Yes, dog good.
Dog good?
Dog good.
Yeah.
All right, ignore me and look at Nelly.
Okay. By Phalia. I will look forward to losing to you. Our next card we want to talk about is a flip card. So this is a modal transform card. So you just pick one side or the other. If you played any Zendikar Rising, that was the one, right?
Yeah.
Then you're familiar with these cards. Same idea. So on the front side, it's Razorgrass Ambush for 1 and a white, an instant that says Razorgrass Ambush deals 3 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. And on the back side, it's a land. It taps for a white mana. It can enter tapped, or you can pay 3 life, and then it doesn't enter tapped. That's it. It's just a land that doesn't come into play tapped if you need mana. It does cost life, but on the other side, if you have enough lands, now it's a lightning bolt for, is it attacking or blocking? Sorry, I know I read it all. It's attacking or blocking. So you just get to kill a creature, or you get a land. That's where we're at these days. I don't think we need to talk about it for too long. You're going to put this in your decks.
Oh, I do have a question for that. What do you think in our format is the prevailing wisdom of, is this a land? Is this half a land? Right? When you're putting your deck together, I think that's perhaps some valuable insight, because this is obviously cracked.
That is a great question, Serge. Thank you for asking it. And I want to answer with, it does depend. You're going to want to start off probably after the set comes out trying a whole bunch of them out in your deck. And when you do that, there's some sort of ratio where you can cut into some of the lands and you can't cut in some of the spells. But yeah.
It depends on how many of these you run.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Because if you end up playing 3 of these kind of cards and you're cutting just lands, then that means that you're playing 3 cards that are technically lands, but they're either tap lands or very painful.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's okay. Sometimes that's not great. So you kind of want, it's like the first one you can kind of include as a land, but then as you add additional ones, you maybe have to start having this conversation of like, well, I'm not the most aggressive deck, so maybe I should like include this as a utility spell that can then be a land if I need to.
Yeah, help some mulligans out. Yeah, I mean, for example, like if you imagine replacing all of your lands in your mono white deck with Razorgrass Field, like now suddenly you're like, oh, my lands just kill me, right? Like you're not going to do that in our Singleton format anyway, but that's like, make yourself go through that mental exercise, and then it's going to be like a 50-50 thing. If you play 10, probably cut.
It also depends on the front, like on what the card is, right? Yeah. Like there are cards, the kind of cards that they've printed that are these double face modal cards are typically utility cards, things that you don't want to necessarily spend an entire slot in your deck on, but you want to have access to that as a card, you know? And so if you're a deck that really doesn't mind taking some extra damage just to have access to yet another removal spell or a like utility creature or a cheap combat trick or whatever, then you're probably just going to play more of these and be like, yeah, this is just a land. This is something I can also just pitch to Chrome Mox if I need to.
Or pitch to Solitude.
Pitch to Solitude. Like your lands that pitch to your powerful busted cards.
Yeah.
Or if you're a control deck, not that we really have those in our format right now, but I don't know.
They
Hey,
exist.
maybe if you like putting lots of lands into play, you'll just include this as a spell to begin with, so that
Sure.
you're upping your count for free.
All right, let's move on. Next up, we have the White Orchard Phantom.
Oh my god.
2 mana, 2/2 Spirit Knight for white, has flying and first strike, and when it enters the battlefield, destroy up to one target non-basic land. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card and put it onto battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Wow.
Like, what are we doing?
Like,
Yeah.
remember when the Leon and Skyhunter was good enough?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
this-
do.
Yeah, I know
This-
you do. Yeah.
This is probably one of the best D&T cards I have seen printed in a very long time.
Yeah, what the hell is this card?
This card
it's
is
pretty
just
messed up.
unbelievably pushed.
You know what this card like
Yeah.
obviously the blow up the Academy or Urza Saga
Yeah.
or whatever.
Sure.
But you know what also is really good? Just blowing up someone's Triome.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just
Turning
yeah.
off their mana
Well,
fixing.
it's a huge tempo shift to block them on colors, especially if you're playing against a 3 or 4 color deck. Also, D&T is a deck they'll be playing the Idiot Bird, Aven Mind Sensor. It'll be playing Latent Arbiter,
maybe.
right? Like there are other effects that can make that even better. This is just absurd.
Yeah.
And flying?
Yeah, you
and
just
flying.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 2/2 flying first strike. That's fantastic
already really
already.
good.
If it didn't have the triggered ability, we'd maybe still be talking about it. I don't know. Like it'd still be in the consideration and flying.
God, just imagine flashing this in against a 3/1 off an Aether Vial or something like that. Yeah,
Sure.
blow up your land.
Haha, nice Vendilion Cleek
Right?
idiot.
Yeah, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also want to point out that it also does this funny thing where if you use your pre-combat main phase to cast it, it's kind of like pseudo duress if they just like left 2 blue up and you're able to just like tap their land. Like this is the bait spell, right? Like if you want to counter White Orchid Phantom, sure. But like if you need to be resolving your other bigger removal spell post combat or something, like you can force through 1 more mana.
It does have big, oh, this person's only ever been Rishad imported in their upkeep. No. You went to combat. What?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, like the fact that it taps their land as well.
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
probably scenarios where you're going to want to blow up your own land.
Flagstone's a Trocaire.
Exactly.
There's
And it
so much
it
flexibility
doesn't
with
say
this.
opponent.
Yeah,
controls.
another land drop or whatever. Yeah.
Or if you have one of the double face cards, it's just like cheap enough to blow up your own land, puts it in the graveyard, recast off Luris or something.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Savine Reclamation effect.
Yeah.
Wild how many
Oh, this card
it's
is so
wild how
messed
many
up.
play patterns this opens
Yeah.
up. All right, let's go to our final white card today, Wheeler.
Witch Enchanter. 3 and a white for a 2/2 human warlock that says when it ETBs, destroy target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. But wait, it's also a land. It's Witch Blessed Meadow. Comes into play tapped unless you pay 3 life, and it taps to add a white mana. Jesus Christ.
So I think there's an important conversation to be had here about why we're so excited about a 4 mana 2/2.
Ooh.
Yes, Wheeler, go ahead.
Ooh. There's a concept called cost of inclusion.
Okay.
Cost of inclusion means that the cost of including a card in your deck is not just relegated to whether or not it fits the themes of what your deck is doing or if it hits a certain power level, because it's also taking up a card slot, and card slots are very important. One of the types of cards that has a very low cost of inclusion are lands, because they are more or less mandatory to play Magic the Gathering. And so when you get a card that can be a land, and especially an untapped land, its cost of inclusion goes way down. It makes it easier to justify including this card in your deck because you can go, well, it's just a land. In this case, this card is also not just a land. It happens to be a human, a disenchant effect that you might not always have, and God do you want if you're in, white or white X like creature decks. It has power and toughness that lets it get found off, like your Recruiter of the Guard can now just find you a land.
Yup.
Like in Recruiter of the Guard, Imperial Recruiter let you find a land so that if you need to untap and slam Palace Jailer or like Aomer or some busted human that like is going to win you Comet, CZ DZ, whatever. Like
Now you're just making things up.
Seasoned Dungeoneer.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Zendikar Rising gave us another land that came in off a 1/3, but it
Comes into
came
play
to play
tapped.
and
Yeah.
also it just gained you life. It didn't.
Yes.
It wasn't a removal spell.
It was like, 1
It wasn't
3
really
for 2
playable.
that gained you 3 life.
Yeah.
And this is
like
the-
you put it into Goblin Charbelcher.
This is the really important thing about all of these cards is that you look at the Zendikar Rising mythics that have the untapped ability.
Yeah.
They're all expensive.
Yes.
They're all like there are 2 X
Mana
spells,
for angels or
3 7 mana cards, and 2 spells that have X in their cost that you need to like really pump mana in to do that. This is just like a fine card.
All right.
Like,
So my next question before we move on,
Yeah.
because I might set myself to get roasted here. So white is traditionally the color of disenchant. Literally has disenchant on it. But it feels like white doesn't have a lot of ETB creatures with disenchant.
No.
With the exception of Loran came in, and a lot of people were playing it. But Loran is actually a little bit clunky or a little bit awkward. Do you think this replaces Loran now in most of the white decks that were running that slot?
yeah, I think so. Lauren loses some points because, being able to Caracas your own Lauren is pretty nice.
Yeah.
But it loses some points by being a 1 toughness creature.
Yeah.
And like you occasionally would activate this if you had like Spirit of the Labyrinth or whatever, but it was more of a like meta call to include Lauren.
Yeah.
I don't think you can have Witch Enchanter isn't a meta call. You just include it in your deck.
Yeah.
And then the meta call is do you add Loran after
well.
that if you really want to stick it to the Time Vault or Academy player or
Or
whatever.
the eggs or the Ben Wheelers in your store.
Yeah,
Sorry,
sure.
what?
right.
Cool.
Blow up some mana rocks.
Jesus
if you need to.
Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Any final thoughts on Witch Enchanter?
It's very good. It's
All
just
right.
very good.
Let's move on to blue. Start us off, Nelly.
it's Dreamtide Whale. I can't wait to tell you about this.
I love this art.
2 into blue 7/5 whale with Vanishing 2. And we haven't talked about Vanishing for a long time, so as a reminder,
We haven't.
it means the creature enters the battlefield with that many time counters on it. And at the beginning of your upkeep, remove a time counter on it. When the last one's removed, sacrifice it. So 2 is not a lot. It comes in, it doesn't have haste. I'm going to read the rest of the card in a second, but the typical pattern would have been untap after you've cast it, remove half of your vanishing counters, so it has 1 left, attack for 7, and then it's going to die the next turn. But this whale has another ability. Whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, proliferate! That means you remember it. Choose any number of permanents and/or players. Give each another counter of each kind they already have. So specifically, the vanishing counters will proliferate as long as someone casts 2 spells in the turn. Someone between the 2 players in the game on either of their turns need to only cast 1 spell
Wait.
each turn for like 3
Oh, yeah.
turns. Is that right? It's like you play this, and then say you don't cast any more spells. Then your opponent has to play 1 spell. Then you have to untap, play 1 spell. Then your opponent has to untap and play 1 spell. Yeah, 3 whole turns. So I'm not sure how many times this thing's going to die to Vanishing. It's much more likely to get swords or, dismember, that sort of thing. It's going to be attacking for 7 a lot. I'm looking forward to it.
I can't wait to kill Serge with this at a Friday night paper fight.
Great.
I'm going to bring like Sea Stompy with like Sea Drake and Serendipifreet and Maelstrom Djinn and this stupid whale.
Just mono blue. I mean, I do love the new. It's not that new. I mean, obviously the double spell became very relevant. I want to say with werewolves in Innistrad, that's when we really started caring about, okay, 2 spells to go from day, 2 spells to go from night, or whatever, switch back and forth. I wanted to call this the Ledger Shredder templating, but that's maybe
Yeah,
a card we're more
the
familiar with. But
ability is the same, where it's either player,
it's
right?
older than that, though, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
But it reminds you of Ledger Shredder because everyone's playing it right now. It's still fairly recent.
Yeah.
And that card's also really good. I think this card's pretty good. Ledger Shredder flies, but this attacks for 7.
Mono blue whale beatdowns. Is that
Oh,
what
I
you're
don't
threatening
think this
me with?
card's very good.
You don't think
You
it's
don't
good?
like this?
No,
I think
I
it's okay.
I mean,
You
you
played
don't-
Reggie.
you don't
Did
like
you
it-
think Reggie was bad?
You don't like Rotting Regisaur?
hold on. This is not Rotting Regisaur.
I know it's not, but
Rotting Regisaur is much better
it's
than
the
this.
same mana to power level.
Yeah.
Right?
I do think 5 is a lot less than 6 in terms of getting this off the board by like blocking.
But the second spell each turn versus discarding, I think, is less of a cost.
I disagree.
Oh, really?
I think the
You love
discarding
the
a card
discard?
every turn is pretty low cost for a deck and a color combination that typically doesn't mind filling its graveyard or dumping its hand. Like, I think that
Fair
you
enough.
can mitigate the Reggie like downside pretty quickly, whereas this thing, I mean, it's just kind of a donkey. Like,
But
there-
Reggie's a donkey too. You just love the 6 toughness though.
so
You
I
could
like
get
the
this-
6 toughness, and I like the zombie, and I like the.
You could
the
have this on
aggression.
turn 2 in like a bug deck. You go elf this, and then you're off to the races, and you're beating people down with a 7/5.
I think this is a case of old man syndrome, where we look at these cards that are just big stats and we're like, hell yeah. And like, that's cool. I too am a victim of old man syndrome for Magic cards. Nelson talked about Lean and Sky Hunter, and I wanted to high five him. But like, this
Okay.
is just a block of
No, no,
stats.
I need to know this right now.
Okay.
It's very interesting for this doesn't come up very often for Wheeler and I. Oh, sorry. In this case, it'd be Nelson and I
Sure.
being on a team saying a card is good and Wheeler saying a card is bad.
7 is a pretty important.
I think so too. So I'm gonna call. I don't do this very often.
Yeah.
Dear viewers at home, whose side are you on? Whale good, whale bad? I'm legitimately curious.
I was the only one that said I'd actually play it.
I'll play it.
No, I'll play. I'll kill you with it. Watch me.
I can't believe you're going
Wait,
to play
what?
it.
Don't you think this has like me written all over it? Don't you think
This
I'm
has
gonna
big.
play it?
This
Well,
has
it is
big,
a bad card after all.
This has big Nelly energy. No, I think this is sweet. What home would you put it in, Nelly?
I just put it in. Is it Blitz? Just want to put it in like blue red cheap stuff.
Okay, I will give one concession.
Uh-huh.
I would play this in a deck with Berserk.
Hell yeah.
Like I do want
Yeah,
Berserk.
Berserk
Teamer
the
Berserk.
whale.
Yeah, I
The
want
whale
Berserk
thirsts
the
for
whale.
blood.
Split your lungs with blood and thunder.
All right, let's move on. Next up, we have Emrakul's Messenger. This is a 2-mana 2/1 Eldrazi Fairy Rogue for 1 and a blue. It has Devoid, which means it's colorless despite having a blue in its pip. It has flying, and whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token with sack this to add a colorless mana. This is a very straightforward. This is just an upgrade on a very cool old card. So I want to go back to some boomer magic here. Back in the days of like blue-red sort of tempo, where you had a couple of counter spells. You'd be playing your Welkin turns and some of the other aggressive flyers, and you just kind of kill them in the air and control the tempo with a couple of counter spells, a couple of lightning bolts. It sort of predated Blue Moon and sort of the blue-red spells before it got a lot of the density of Drakes and stuff like that. And I like this card in that sort of role, in that kind of home. And now there's so much support for double spell, and this gets you mana, this gets you another body as a blocker. I don't know if I'd play it these days though.
Flying Men.
You just like this? You just like this as Flying Man straight up?
Yeah, it's a deck that just wants to play 2-power, 2-mana flying creatures anyways.
I thought you were all in on the 1-mana 1/1s.
No, that deck has moved away from the 1-mana
Yeah?
1/1s.
Okay.
There's just, I mean, you still play them, but you play the
Sure.
ones that also have like 3 lines of text on them.
Oh, the moment when you have to cut Flying Men.
Yeah,
from
Flying Man does not play Flying Man
Flying Man
anymore.
doesn't play Flying
But what
Men
it
anymore.
does
it?
play
Yeah.
is every curiosity under
Yeah,
the sun.
yeah, right.
And
Yep.
so that guarantees that you can smack in the air, make a chump blocker, and just like brick whatever their aggression is.
I like
hopefully.
that it plays offense and defense for a deck like that, right?
Mhm.
Because
Yes.
that deck does it sort of famously
races a
folds to
lot.
trample creatures, and that might
Yes.
still happen here, but at least you're holding down the, large attacking with a sword idiots of the world.
Yeah.
This is that perfect encapsulation of what you were saying before of one very niche deck just got very happy.
It's also pretty good against GT, which is and like
Yeah, that's
Lifelinkers,
kinda
which
funny.
can put a wrench
Yeah.
in that
Yeah,
that
for
strategy.
sure.
Yeah.
100%.
Shadow Spear is too good.
Oh.
Wheeler, you're up next.
God, Shadow Spear. Flare of Denial. This is the blue flare. 1 blue for an instant. You may sacrifice a non-token blue creature rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Counter target spell. I am pretty low on the flares overall. This one I don't mind as much because there are already homes where you want to play this card. Like casting cancel is not as embarrassing as you think it is. And a lot of people just do that already. You know, how often have you really disallowed a fetch land or a Thoracle trigger? Like,
Yeah.
come on.
No, it's been a big mission of R&D to get us to play cancel, and it's really working.
Yeah, I mean,
There's been
there's
several, yeah.
That 3 steps ahead is like the new one from OTJ is like kind of reasonable too, but like you'll see them very sparingly. There are a lot of very good 2 mana counters and free counters. And so this one is more of like when you think of Force of Will, you often think like you pitch to cast it, and then occasionally you'll tap 5. I think this one is more you're going to cast this for 3, but then occasionally you'll just sacrifice your Snapcaster Mage or your like Brazen Borrower or Vendilion Clique if it's going to win you the game
Sure, yeah.
or stop them. And I think that's okay. I'm lower on this than most people have been.
I'm pretty honest, too, yeah.
There are some spots where, again, like Flying Men or Merfolk.
I got one for you.
Oh, yeah?
Reanimator.
Sure.
You got your looter out, and then you're making a look at me. No? You don't like this for Reanimator?
Protection, where if you have a second creature, then it works, right? Like you play more than one creature in Reanimator.
You don't really play looters anymore in Reanimator.
What?
They aren't all creatures.
It's all spells now.
But I mean, sacrificing a Baleful Strix or like an Ice Fang
Some
Codal.
looters.
Yeah, there's some stuff that you can do.
Sacrifice your
anymore.
Jace.
Occasionally it
baby.
plays like Vohar or Baby Jace.
Yeah, Baby
but
Jace.
like, I mean, Baby Jace I would prefer not to sacrifice.
Yeah, that's fair. All right.
I'm on this card where it's like I agree with Wheeler, but I want to say like you're gonna play it as a cancel, but it's just nice to have the clause. The clause isn't always gonna work for you, but
Yeah.
it's nice. It's nice to have it.
You know, like when discussing this card,
It's like getting bread for the table.
God, you know what's going to be terrible for this, though, is judge calls, because so many people are going to try and sack an elf to it or something like that.
It does
and
have
like,
to be a
"Oh, yeah,
non-token blue creature.
I'm going to sack a creature to this. And you're like, no, it has to be a blue creature.
I do think it's really funny that in a set with all these devoid cards, there is a cycle that makes you sack.
checks the color before
Yeah.
the cost. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty awkward.
All right. We're at
Is my
Nelly
turn?
now.
Yes.
I wish to tell you about Harbinger of the Seas. I saw this card leaked, and I like turned off Twitter and hoped it wasn't real. But I saw this like a month ago or something, whenever that was. 1 blue for a 2/2 Merfolk Wizard. Non-basic lands or islands. No other abilities. That's right. We've got another Magus of the Moon, this time in blue, and it's a Merfolk and a Wizard.
Literal, actual blue moon.
Actual blue moon. Yeah. So there's no enchantment to flesh out the cycle or whatever to parallel blood moon from the dark, but Time Spiral or Future Sight's Magus the Moon now has a little twin in blue. You know, if you're playing Merfolk, you probably have to include it.
Oh, yeah.
If you're
Well, this is
playing
amazing.
Blue Moon, you're going to include it. And then maybe some other homes too. This card's pretty messed up.
This is nuts for Merfolk, because a lot of the Merfolk lords give you island
Yeah.
walk.
Yeah.
And this just, I mean, you used to play, what was
Yeah.
that ridiculous 2-mana enchantment that like, haha,
Spreading
you're
seas.
like,
Spreading seas.
you
Spreading
like
seas.
spreading seas to
I mean,
try
maybe
and
you
set
still
up your
should.
lords,
This
and now
can
you
get
just have
killed, yeah.
Harbinger of the Seas? This is very cool. And I do feel a big energy of this whole set is like, hey, boomers, you remember this card?
Sure.
Ah?
This card feels too good to me. Like I'm nervous about it. I'm not looking forward to the power of Blue Moon or Blood Moon in an actual blue card. I worry that your deck construction is going to just shift away from red or something.
I mean, honestly,
play
mono
tutors for this thing.
mono blue moon is kind of interesting.
Yeah, terrifying. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I'm worried about this card killing me too much.
I do have a couple of 3-1 results with mono blue mid range that splashed exactly Blood Moon and Magus of the Moon.
Yeah, but like
And
mono
now you can play this.
Mono Blue Moon. What was it was like the first Arena Invitational was won by Mono Blue with that stupid Jin that counts the number of
Tempe
islands.
D.
Tempest Jin?
Yeah,
Hell
Tempest
Oh
Jin.
my boy!
Maybe I'm going a little too old school here, but like this maybe brings us back into the world of like Vidalcan Shackles.
Oh no! You're not getting old school, pal. You're entering the future,
Right?
Oh
Like,
my big
so-
four-headed baby! Oh God!
is that a 5-head?
That's
I mean,
brother.
it's-
That's a 7-head.
So what's amazing about the Harbinger here is it's an unassuming card. It's a 3-mana 2/2, but it is potentially good enough to give birth to a brand new deck, like a really scary competitive deck, right?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I'm excited. I hate to play against it, but I'm excited. Look, as a man who loves a greedy mana base, oh no.
I mean, I'm sure I'll sleeve this card up and kill some people with it, but
Yep.
yeah.
God,
I'm worried there's going to be some bad feels.
Yes. All right. Next up, we've got the Hope Ender Quattle.
Caudal.
Quattle.
Sure.
It's a 3-mana 2/2 Eldrazi Snake for 2 and a blue. It has Devoid, which means it's colorless. It has Flash. Yeah, I can't pitch this with anything. Yeah. When you cast the spell, counter target spell an opponent controls unless they pay 1, and it has flying.
You're just laughing about this getting pitched to Force of Will?
No, I'm just laughing about uncounterable like force spike
Yeah.
because it's a cast trigger.
When you
Oh my
cast
god,
the
yeah, it
spell-
is. When you
Oh
cast
my
it, not
God.
when the
cast
CTB.
trigger.
It's uncounterable.
Yes, the
Holy moly.
stupid.
It's a
2 mana.
cast trigger.
Imagine if the 2-mana 1/1 fairy was uncounterable.
I didn't even realize that. So, things to evaluate about this card. So, blue already has a whole slew of very powerful 3-mana interaction attached to flying bodies. We've got Nimble Obstructionist. We've got the classic is the Vendilion Clique.
The Picklock.
Yeah.
The fairy.
Brazen Borrower.
Brazen
Thank you,
Borrower
sorry.
is remarkable. And then you can splash into a bunch of other stuff. They're all 3/1s. This being a 2/2 is very interesting because it sets you up to block favorably a bunch of cards that you couldn't do before with the 3/1s. Like the 3/1s being, I'm going to muck with you in a certain way and present a clock and maybe trade, whatever, that's fine. The fact that this is an uncountable force spike is so annoying. I actually do think it's very important that this card has Devoid. I think if this was just flash straight blue and you could pitch it to Subtlety, to Force of Will, to Force of Negation, would be just entirely too ridiculous. But I think this is going to see a lot of play.
That spot is pretty choked, and it is just a force spike. Like, it's not as powerful a trigger as Spell Queller, right? So, like, there's probably going to be lots of times when you, like, go to put this in your deck and you're like, I really don't know what I'm cutting for this.
Sure.
And I get that, but still, it's important to, like, nod and
Yeah,
consider it.
it's a card that's going to get benched just due to like not due to quality, but due to like, well, I only can afford so many 3-drops.
Yep.
Yeah.
And technically what this do isn't like that. I mean, this is unique.
Yes.
But like its function in the game is not going to be something that a blue X like Tempo-y deck is going to be lacking in tools to like, try to replicate.
It is hilarious.
But it-
yeah.
It's a good one, though. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna serve you up a little bit of nostalgia here. Wheeler, you're up next.
Null Drifter. 7 mana for a 4/4 Eldrazi Elemental. When you cast the spell, draw 2 cards. Flying, Annihilator 1, and evoke for 2 and a blue. So you can evoke this card like Muldrifter. And when you evoke it, you get to draw 2 cards as a cast trigger. So uncounterable, draw 2 cards. This is, I mean, we say uncounterable in the sense that it, still uses the stack, but the card doesn't have to resolve to get that effect, which can be kind of relevant. Because it's on cast, you can't do the kind of shenanigans that would come from like ephemerating my Muldrifter with the evoke trigger on the stack, and then I get to draw 4 cards. Instead, you'll have to settle for ephemerating this with the evoke trigger on the stack, getting 2 cards, and then having a 4/4 flying Annihilator 1, which adds up shockingly fast.
So that's also good.
Yeah. I like this card a lot. I don't entirely know where I'm going to play it.
Agreed.
I'm kind of obsessed with Eldrazi in like building like big green or green blue channel Eldrazi in Canlander, and I think this is one that could maybe show up in that deck. There are a lot of cards that reduce the cost of casting Eldrazi, so like hard casting this is not that far fetched in like a blue green ramp deck.
There's a land we're going to talk about eventually, so that the number 7 in the top rate is going to matter.
Yeah.
So.
And one thing I really like about this, this is more of a pet kind of interaction, is I really like the interaction with Food Chain and Evoke creatures, where Food Chain, the enchantment, you exile a creature, add a bunch of mana equal to its mana cost +1, but only use that on creature spells. So you evoke the creature, you get the ETB, and then with the sacrifice trigger on the stack, you exile it and then get all that mana. And you could do it with normal Mull Drifter to get 6 mana and draw 2 cards, but this lets you get 8 mana and draw 2 cards.
I didn't even think about Food Chain.
Yeah.
With the, what's the war mechanic that has the
Prototype?
Prototype
Well-
as well? Thank you for being able to translate Serge there.
I think for Prototype, it retains, it like has that characteristic. The mana value.
Mana
Oh.
value is included. Yeah, you can't.
Yeah.
do
Oh,
the
okay.
prototype.
Well,
'Cause it
there.
counts
Never
that.
mind me.
No, it's
You'll
okay.
But
But yeah, Elf turn 1, Food Chain turn 2, and then on turn 3,
Off
I'm
to the
casting a
races.
Woodfall Primus and blowing up your
Yeah.
land.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
yeah, kind of cool.
Beautiful. Nelly, you're up.
Hey, I'd like to tell you about Sink into Stupor. It's another modal double face card. This one on the front side is 1 blue for an instant that says return target spell or non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand. Now that ability, like that one-shot effect, is only present on a few cards. It's from Venser, and then they made a two mana card in Innistrad that does it. Substantiate, right? Yeah. So you can get it for 4 mana on a body, or you can get it for 2 mana.
You don't want
And
this mic in my face. I'm going to be laughing every time we get one of these cards.
Yeah, they're
I'm intentionally trying to not clog Nelson's description with
Yeah, but for real though, this effect is actually pretty rare. There's 1 or 2 other places you can get it, I'm sure. I've forgotten someone, but like getting to target a spell or a permanent.
Yeah.
Now it does say opponent controls, you're not bouncing your own stuff, but still it can be their spell or their thing. And it goes back to their hand for 3 mana. It's still pretty cheap. Or, hey, what if you don't have the 3 mana, Wheeler? What do we have on the back of this?
Why, it's a land!
Oh my god.
Oh, look, it's just a land on the backside. You can just have a land instead. It enters tapped unless you pay 3 life. It's called Soporific Springs. You're going to cast plenty of your spells off of it because this is going into a lot of decks.
All right. What decks? Let's talk about this. Where are you hyped for this?
I mean,
Tempo.
actually Blue Moon maybe not because it's a non-basic. But yeah, Tempo, Jeskai? You don't think so? So few single land spots. That's
I don't
okay.
mean,
Good
I don't
question.
mean to suddenly like do the
you're
reverse
good.
card and be like, this is going to go in every deck. I'm like, great. Which decks?
I think if Paradox Academy is in your deck, you should play this card.
Yeah,
I think if Tolarian Academy is in your deck, you're probably playing this card.
What was the? I remember you were playing
Elder.
eggs.
Yeah.
And then you got back to basics. Oh, it was Otawara.
Yeah.
So I mean, this does make an interesting Otawara impression. Obviously, the cost is a lot higher to cast it, but you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think if you're like, is it Tempo? Like an aggressive
Sure.
blue-red deck where this pitches to Force of Will is an untapped land.
Oh my God, your Otawara
Bounces
the
the
force
thing.
of will.
Yeah.
I could maybe even see it in just like the Omnath value piles too.
Yeah.
Like you play, hey, you like you say, you're playing Otawara already. You're gonna play some number of lands.
It's kind
Yeah, go ahead.
it's kind of funny because it's not as good as the white ones.
No.
And wait till you see the other ones. But it does get added benefit by like it's blue. Like
Yeah, it is a blue card.
It's a blue card.
blue is not typically a Chromox color. And also the pitch elemental in blue subtlety is, I mean, frankly, it's underplayed, but it's not as played.
No.
Like
but yeah.
Thomas from winning the championship this year is probably pretty excited to put this in like recall blue-red, right? Maybe? You don't think it makes the cut? I don't know. Maybe it does go in Blue Moon. Maybe the spell is just powerful enough that you put this in your Blue Moon.
Yeah.
Count it as a spell.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to Strix Serenade.
It's your turn, Serge.
It is my turn.
Yeah.
Strict Serenade is a 1-mana instant, counter target artifact, creature, or planeswalker spell. Its controller gets a 2/2 blue bird creature token with flying. Now, this is a callback to Swan Song, which was a 1-mana instant that countered an instant or sorcery. I think that was it.
And
Or
enchantment.
enchantment.
Instant sorcery or enchantment spell. I think this is much more narrow than Swan Song. Swan Song, I only ever really saw a lot of play in like CDH. I haven't really seen Swan Song make a huge splash in our format. That being said, there are some extremely powerful broken planeswalkers in our formats. Your Minsk and Booze, your Comets, your Ren and Sixes, your Three Fairies. I haven't seen as much Three Fairy lately, actually. Maybe your Oko.
It's been around. Yeah.
Yeah. What are you looking at me for?
Very friendly.
Lucky man.
Oh, yeah.
Jesus.
Good for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
What's
I
it
can
like?
So I can absolutely see playing Strict Serenade as an answer if you are getting repeatedly bullied by these Planeswalker decks. I don't know if it's the greatest answer. I think it's a little bit narrow, but you disagree? You're going to say strictly unplayable?
I just think this is probably a
Strix-
meta call. Go ahead.
Strictly unplayable.
Strictly unplayable.
I do think this is strictly unplayable.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Wanted to give the benefit of the doubt.
Let me very quickly explain why.
Hit me. Yep.
So Swan Song, when it did see play, was typically in combo decks
Yes, to
because
guarantee your win.
Yeah, exactly. And it's because it deals with card types that are often played in strategies that don't care about the pressure that comes with that 2/2 flyer, right? Strict Serenade is just converting a big threat into a smaller threat, right? Like it's just kind of a downgrade. Granted, this is a big difference between 2/2 Bird and Minsk and Boo Timeless Heroes.
Yeah, exactly.
But I feel like this is the kind of card where unless you're countering like Paradox Engine with this, I'm not super excited to include it in the 99.
Yeah, I wonder if it's like if you find that all your opponents are either on Paradox Engine or Fauna Shaman. You know what I mean? Like it's just I could maybe see meta calling this card if you're like my room is full of people who are trying to do busted stuff with permanents.
Yeah.
And so I just want another 1-mana way to kind of mess them up.
Yeah.
Maybe, but I'm not like planning to play this in
I'd
anything.
rather just play Spell Pierce.
Sure, yeah, exactly. Well, the
Yeah.
thing is it targets creatures, so
Yeah. It is really good against eggs. I will tell you
right.
Yeah. What's Eggs going to do with a 2/2? You're like,
Yeah.
what's this idiot bird doing on
that.
my
Yeah,
side?
I don't know what this stupid bird's doing, but I would have loved that walking ballista for $1 million.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So there's moments when it'll be fine.
Oh, man. I love that we lined it up that Wheeler has the second giant paragraph to deliver. Have fun, Wheeler. It's your turn.
I will have fun, Serge, because my sweet baby girl Tameo is back. Tameo, Inquisitive Student. 1 blue for a 0/3 legendary creature, Moonfolk Wizard, with flying, and whenever Tameo attacks, you investigate. When you draw your third card in a turn, exile Tameo, then return her to the battlefield transformed under her owner's control. She comes back as Tameo Seasoned Scholar. 2 starting loyalty is now blue-green. +2. Until your next turn, whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, it gets -1/-0 until end of turn. -3. Return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. If it's a green card, add 1 mana of any color. -7. Draw cards equal to half the number of cards in your library, rounded up. You get an emblem with you have no maximum hand size. Jesus Christ.
I think you said 1/3 just for our listeners.
No, it's an 0/3. It's an 0/3.
0/3. Yeah, on the front side.
Paul, if we can go back to the front side. Okay. This is a 1-mana card.
Yeah.
This is a 1-mana planeswalker.
Is
Nobody
it?
ever mentioned Deathrite Shaman here. It is a 1-mana planeswalker.
Sure.
It blocks Ragavan.
Yeah.
It's blue. It's flying. It attacks, it starts attacking very early in the game and starts pooping out game objects. Game objects that happen to be artifacts. Game objects that happen to be artifacts that also draw you cards. And then in order for this to transform, you just have to draw 3 cards in a single turn. This can be done by your draw step, the clue token generated by Tamiyo, and then, I don't know, any one of the random cantrips that we play. This can also be done with cards like Brainstorm, Treasure Cruise, Ancestral Recall. All very powerful cards, some of those that can be played at instant speed to protect Tamiyo from spot removal. Then when we get to the flip side, you just have a very cheap Planeswalker that can be incredibly annoying, deceptively annoying at keeping her or you alive, that you can then just cash in immediately. I don't think you should, like, maybe it's all the trauma I've received from the story from Kamigawa relating to Tamiyo, but, like, don't get sentimental about this card, is the way that I'm seeing it.
Sure, you only paid 1 blue to get in.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
If I pay 1 blue to get this, to maybe brick a combat, make a clue, draw some cards, and then it lets me double bolt or double ponder, and then it dies in combat, that's great. That's fine.
Yeah.
But if I don't want to do that, and I just want to keep ticking this up over and over again, it will get to ultimate shockingly fast. Like, going immediately play, it flips, tick it up to 4. It's going to flip pretty early, or it's going to flip under like the conditions that you have set. Basically, you don't even have to flip it if you don't want to. That's another thing.
Yeah, you
can just keep attacking and making clues.
If you can't protect it, and they maybe have a creature that isn't gonna kill you, but they don't have a lightning bolt, maybe you just don't draw 3 cards in the same turn and keep making clues.
And then when you ultimate, you win the game. And that's pretty cool. I try to not make very sweeping, bold statements about cards in this format. I think this card is messed up. I think this card is incredible, like best card in the set potential. Like, the more I think about this card, the more I like this card. It's 1 mana and it flies. And it's blue.
I see it more on the same level as like Jace Vryn's Prodigy, of something that a lot of blue decks are really going to enjoy, and you're going to see a lot of play of it, but might quickly fall out of favor because it's more of an engine card than a winning card. But I do agree, it's very good, but I might be a step slightly lower than you with your valuation. I'm okay to be wrong.
This can block.
Yes, it can.
JVP can't really block.
That's true. I mean, you do get the weird line of block, activate, and then flip. And
yeah,
but no, I
but
get
you also have that if you really want to with
Needs
it.
3 of their fury damage.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, the fact that it blocks Ragavan is huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
I can't tell whether this or a Johnny are like more powerful. But
like
this one's only 1 mana.
I like this one way more than a Johnny.
Yeah.
Way more than a Johnny.
Sure. I like
I
Johnny
wouldn't
a lot.
I wouldn't even consider a Johnny in the conversation. I'm like, is this or Ocelot Pride more powerful?
Slot Pride is also messed up.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to finding the nicknames because Tamiyo Inquisitive Student is a bit of a mouthful.
Sure.
I don't know if we're going to call it TIS, but something, if you could fit in Ancestral Recall in there or any of the other spells that she casts.
Tamiyo 3.
Tamiyo
03.
Tammy
All right.
03. I like that.
Tamiyo 3.
That's good. Yeah,
All right.
but type your suggestions. I want to read your nicknames.
Let's take it home. Second to last card, Nelly.
Let's talk about Triton Wavebreaker, another 1 blue mana creature, this time an enchantment with Bestow. It's a 1/1, and it bestows for 1 and a blue. As long as Triton Wavebreaker is a creature, it has prowess, and the enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has prowess. So pretty straightforward, powerful role player here. Can fit into a couple of different decks, obviously. Bestow Beatdown gets another potential include as a cheap Bestow creature. The Bestows count as a non-creature spell when you put them on the stack with Bestow. So if that's all you're doing in 1 turn off of your Light Paws or Pearlier, I mean, that'll trigger. And then if you want to just play it in like Blue-Red or Teamer Prowess, hey, you have another 1-drop Prowess creature.
I want to add, I don't play blue currently for the Bestow Beatdown deck. Maybe that's a blind spot I have.
Blue, just green-white?
Green-white, sometimes black.
Okay, neat.
Yeah,
All
black
right.
has some neat support for that.
I think I've looked at someone's list that was banned specifically to get like the Commander Enchantress creature.
So Boggles is traditionally a blue deck. because blue gets you access to Shroud and some of the stuff like that. So like putting this on a 3-mana 2/2 attacks makes an angel. What's that called?
Case of Saint Draft.
Kais of Chain Draft. Like that's cracked. And
Now we're talking
I
about
like
Magic.
this in more of like a Boggles version of the deck than a straight Sanctum Stompy. But correct me if I'm mistaken, multiple copies of Prowess stack, right?
Sure.
So like if you put this on an already existing Prowess creature or on like a little zoomy dragon or whatever,
There's even some creatures that have prowess.
yeah. That gets completely out of hand. So I think I like this more in the Prowess deck you're talking about than the Sanctum Stompy personally.
Yeah, and if you berserk after bestowing, then you still have a blocker. It's kind of
That's
exciting.
kind of hot.
It's kind of cool, right?
All right, the final card we're going to talk about today is Ugin's Binding. This is a 3-mana instant for 2 and a blue with Devoid, therefore it's colorless. Return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. And then, whenever you cast a colorless spell with mana value 7 or greater, you may exile the Binding from your graveyard. When you do, return each non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand.
Gosh, that's messed up.
Yeah, that's so good.
You ever just want to have a free Cyclonic Rift?
Yeah, sure. Why not, dude?
Like the evoke potential on the Null Drifter is so
Yeah.
huge that like you're almost gonna be in some games where you want to wait until they play more stuff so you get more off of the trigger.
Damn, I guess I just have to cast this Mirror Enforcer for free and what's your entire board?
Yeah.
Oh, stupid. Cool callback to Kozilek's return.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I
pick
was
up
gonna
your
say,
card.
yeah. At first, I was like, "Oh, maybe this just returns to your hand, right? Right? Yeah. No. I like that we're not even commenting on it. We're just kind of sighing, you know?
I don't know. Like, well, where does this go? Like, it definitely goes into Wheeler's blue-green channel Eldrazi deck we were talking about.
Yeah.
You do have to have colorless spells with mana value 7 in your deck.
I'd play
to
this in BattleBots.
Yeah, I
Sure,
was gonna say in
sure.
affinity decks because you get stuff up there. Hilariously, if you get like a Walking Ballista at high enough value, this also works.
I wonder if it's like a consideration for any of the decks that are winning with that card then as their like the creature combo that go infinite mana or something.
I mean,
'Cause
unfortunately,
it's
with
like,
Walking Ballista, you're at a sufficiently large Walking Ballista already wins, so you don't really need it.
but not if they have a Leyline of Sanctity specifically. You need to know.
What the hell are you talking about?
Hey,
If you can't target them with your Walking Ballista and you have to wait a turn to attack them with an infinitely large one, now
do
it just
this.
clears it.
If you're in a point where you have
Just
an
their
infinitely
copy.
large Walking Ballista, you can deal with their Leyline of Sanctity. Don't worry.
just shoot all their creatures, but what if they also have a
guess.
Moat Wheeler?
No, I'm saying
bounces
just
both of them.
tutor up the Odawara.
Sure.
God, this is putting me on Academy-based tilt.
okay, so
This is very powerful, but also very niche.
It's
and
pretty niche,
I
right?
think this is going to be a nightmare in Commander and maybe not see a ton of play in our format.
yeah, no, I'm just trying to think of how often you want to include it because the trigger is super powerful.
I don't know, dude. If
But
I'm
it
playing
goes infinity,
BattleBots,
sure.
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't know if it sees play outside of BattleBots or
No,
Channel.
there's not a lot of decks that have 7 mana value colorless spells, right?
But when this card hits,
yeah, oh,
it hits
Oh,
real
geez.
hard.
just right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. That is going to do it for part 1 of our set review. A reminder that our set reviews are not exhaustive. We're just talking about the cards that we think are going to make an impact, and holy moly, the set is going to have an impact. We know we've missed some cards. There are so many killers in this one, but if there's some specifically you notice we missed, let us know down in the comments below. Look forward to the other 3 parts of the set review, our first ever 4-parter, with the finale including our final thoughts on everything. Maybe we'll talk about like our rankings for the flares or whatever. Reminder that everything we do is brought to you by you, the support of a Patreon, over at patreon.com/LoneyReadyRun. I've been Serge, joined by Nelly,
I was here.
Wheeler.
They're just lands.
Shout out to Paul on Tech.
Hello.
Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.